country, and that we may be reminded of our great responsibility that we have to stand up for our faith. We ask this in your name, you're holy and blessed, now and ever to ages of ages. Amen. Please be seated. So by way of a very brief background and introduction, I'd like to say that on behalf of the Christian Rights and Freedom Ministry Steering Committee, which is perhaps the newest ministry of our church, we would like to welcome you all, and certainly the co-chairs of that committee, Mr. Harry Demas, Mr. Richard Pappas, and Dr. Harry Naples. We would like to welcome you, John. And indeed, we're so grateful to have John with us because he came quite a long distance all the way from Houston, Texas to be with us, and even traveling at his own expense and taking time off from his work and his clientele and his very busy legal practice and his family. And he's a very devoted father. We certainly also want to thank Dr. Chris Papadopoulos and Richard Pappas, who helped to organize the luncheon that we had this afternoon, so John could be welcomed here in our community. It's true that we've all been glued to our TVs in the last few weeks, watching with horror all the terrible developments in the Middle East and in Europe. We know about the indiscriminate killings in Paris and in Brussels, and the brazen disregard for basic human rights and decency that seems to have gone out the window as we struggle to understand the source of this scourge and just what we might do about it. The fact is, much of what these killers learned, they learned in their schools. The hatred was imbued in their soul at a very young age. That is obvious to most Europeans now, and perhaps it's a bit late. It's becoming certainly true and well known to us here in America. But what do we know about what is going on in the USA? Do we know what our children are being taught? What is going on in some of our schools here in America? This is what John is here to talk to us about. Certainly as an Archon and a very respected attorney, John comes to us with outstanding credentials. He is a powerhouse lawyer, well recognized in the great state of Texas and nationally. He is a partner in the law firm of AZA. The Z stands for Zavitsanos. His cases have repeatedly been featured in the Wall Street Journal, and the Times, the New York Times, the National Law Journal, the American Lawyer, the Texas Lawyer, and many other national publications. But John is also a great servant to our faith. He is an Archon of the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle. He serves on a 5-member committee of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, which is focused on the issue of human rights and litigating those matters in the European courts. He has led a very successful Exarch's fundraising appeal as well. He has served as the president of his parish council for 3 terms. He has a grassroots understanding of what happens in our own parishes. And his home parish is the Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church, or the Cathedral as it is known in Houston, Texas. He was the president of the school, AOS, the Annunciation Orthodox School, as it is known, serving as the president of that board, which is a very successful Greek Orthodox charter school in Houston. And each year, there are more than 800 students who register in that school, which started as a school within the church, but has now grown to the point that it is perhaps the most desirable school to attend for children through the 8th grade in all of Houston. It is known as the School of Hearts and Minds in Houston. We certainly could not be happier to invite John to come and speak to us, and that he's here, that he's taken the time. Seems almost unbelievable that you would come here to Naples and be with us, but we're very grateful. It's true that this is just one of many different events that will be unfolding throughout the season from January through April. And we do hope that people who are here gathered will take the time to be familiar with the rest of the program that is unfolding. And pleased to support it with all our strength in our hearts. Finally, the last thing that really made me happy to learn today, and was one of the first things that we learned as we sat down to lunch today, is to come to understand that John is a fellow of Katherine, and that he spends a month in Greece each summer, and the place he stays is within sight of my dad's village. And so we do welcome you from the bottom of our hearts, with open arms and with love. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much, Father. Father, members of the Parish Council, ladies of the Veloctajos, and parishioners of this very vibrant, wonderful parish, thank you very much for having me. I had the privilege today of having lunch with some of the members of the Parish Council, some of the leaders in your community, and y'all have been just very, very gracious. And you have a very, very progressive thinking priest. You're very lucky. You have some incredible programs here, and this is, having programs like this is really quite visionary, and I encourage you to continue this. So I'm here tonight to talk about the Turkish influence in the United States. And I'm going to break that down into two parts. I'm going to talk about first, I'm going to try to be brief on the front end, briefly talk about what the government itself does in terms of lobbying efforts, and I'm using lobbying very broadly. And then second, and that would be from the top down, and then second, what the Turks are doing from the bottom up in terms of in our schools, and it's really, it's absolutely shocking. You want to say that it's happening under our noses, but it's really not. I mean, it's happening right in front of our faces, and it is growing like every year, just exponentially, gets bigger and bigger. And what I want to do is I want to start out, maybe the best way to start this is by playing this piece that appeared on 60 Minutes, I think it was a couple of years ago, a few years ago, on an Islamic imam known as Fethullah Gulen. This is a guy who Time Magazine included him on their list of the 100 most influential people in the world. This is a guy that has received all kinds of awards from Congress and many state legislators. I'll tell you about one in particular a little bit later. But this is a guy who has spearheaded a movement in the United States to start these charter schools here in the United States. And a charter school is different than a private school. You have public schools. Public schools are very highly regulated. All the employees are state employees. It is 100% public, and it is nonprofit. Private schools are typically parochial schools, completely private. There are some requirements that you have to meet in terms of getting accredited and things of that sort. But the funding is almost always exclusively private. That's why they charge tuition. Charter schools are a hybrid between the two. In a charter school, the state pays for the charter school, pays to build it, pays to operate it, pays to run it, but it is privately owned. And it is managed privately. Okay? And this man that you're about to see has sprinkled charter schools all through the United States. And so what I'd like to do is, let's start the piece. When we get done with this piece, you're probably going to want to stand up and cheer him until you get done listening to the rest of the presentation. All right, so let's play this first. It's about 13 minutes, and here it is.
Over the past decade, scores of charter schools have popped up all over the U.S., all sharing some common features. Most of them are high-achieving academically. They stress math and science. And one more thing, they're founded and largely run by immigrants from Turkey who are carrying out the teachings of a Turkish Islamic cleric, Fethullah Gulen. He's the spiritual leader of a growing and increasingly influential force in the Muslim world known as the Gulen movement, with millions upon millions of disciples who compare him to Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Gulen promotes tolerance, interfaith dialogue, and above all, he promotes education. And yet he's a mystery man. He's never seen or heard in public, and the more power he gains, the more questions are raised about his motives and the schools.
The story will continue in a moment.
Hi, everyone. Hi. This is the Harmony School in Houston, part of a rapidly expanding chain of 36 charter schools in Texas. They serve mostly underprivileged students, and they all emphasize math and science.
Inside, there's an elastic collision between the gas particles.
What this is the static electricity generator.
Classwork stresses hands-on experiments and competitiveness. Students made this hovercraft out of leaf blowers for a science contest.
That's great.
Being a charter chain means they're public schools costing taxpayers nearly $150 million a year.
So you don't even have a driver's license yet?
But I have a robotics license. Julie Norton is an administrator with the Harmony chain of schools.
So we have about 20,000 students.
Is there a waiting list?
Yes, we have a waiting list. We have approximately 30,000 students on our waiting list. We have more students on the waiting list than we actually have enrolled in the school.
The education here gets high marks as students get state-of-the-art technology and extensive one-on-one tutoring.
You get excited to come to school?
Yeah.
Oh, I go like, woo!
The enthusiasm is hard to miss, as is the fact that many of the teachers are Turkish, some just recently arrived and hard to understand.
When did you get here, to the United States?
Yeah, I got a DV lottery, and because of the DV lottery, I came here.
There are a total of about 130 charter schools like Harmony in 26 states. Together, they form the largest collection of charter schools in the country. Here's what's curious. They're founded and run by immigrant businessmen and academics from Turkey. Why are they building public schools here? Well, the answer seems to lie with this mystery man, the Turkish Imam Fethullah Gulen, who tells his followers that to be devout Muslims, they shouldn't build mosques, they should build schools, and not to teach religion, but science. In sermons on the web, he actually says, studying physics, mathematics, and chemistry is worshiping God. So Gulen's followers have gone out and built over 1,000 schools around the globe, from Turkey to Togo, from Taiwan to Texas.
His message is that if you want to solve any social problem for the longer term, the solution has to go through education.
Businessman Alp Aslandawan chairs a foundation in Houston that advances Gulen's teachings.
It's so counterintuitive that people from Turkey would come here to get involved here in education.
People do go to other countries, including Africa. The United States, especially in math and science, is not really good, and many parents complain about that. So there is a need for skilled teachers in the United States in that fields.
We went to Turkey to learn more and found Gulen schools are everywhere and considered the best. They're often multi-million-dollar high-tech facilities where girls are equal to boys, and English is taught starting in first grade. Gulen didn't only influence education. Starting in the late 60s as a young imam, he urged crowds of middle-class Turks to learn from the West and embrace its values, including an unexpected one, making money. In this internet sermon, he even told his followers, if you don't seek ways to be wealthy, that is a sin in the eyes of God. So his disciples in Turkey became successful businessmen and built a multi-billion-dollar Gulen empire that beyond the schools includes TV stations, a major bank, Turkey's largest trade association, and biggest newspaper.
They love capitalism. You know, it really is very much a business network as much as a religion in many ways.
Andrew Finkel, who's been a freelance reporter in Turkey for 25 years, says Gulen tells his followers to reach out to people of other faiths.
Tolerance is a very key part of their message. And you know, it's not about the use of force.
It's as far away from Osama bin Laden as you can get.
Very, very, very.
Within religion?
Very, very different, yes.
So I guess one of the big questions is what kind of a Islamic leader is Gulen?
He leads by his own charismatic personality.
Would you call it a personality cult?
Yes.
To his followers, Gulen's like a living prophet, and he used his influence to change the course of Turkey's politics, helping to make it a functioning, moderate Islamic democracy. One thing we couldn't find in Turkey was Gulen. Actually, very few people ever see him in person. He preaches via webcast from a prayer room in an isolated and unlikely location. For over a decade, Gulen has been living in self-imposed exile and seclusion in, of all places, the Poconos, in this gated